chug, 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 chug,
Welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when you're talking about children's card games. Tonight, we are introducing the concept of pregame. So, from now on, Blake and I are going to have a model on our podcast where we do a long episode, short episode, long episode, and then we're going to take a break. So we're going to be getting more content out to you guys at the cost of maybe doing a smaller episode. So we're calling these smaller episodes the pregame. Ooh. So we record these smaller episodes before we record one of our longer episodes. So we can begin with some of our drinks, start to get a little into the woozy drinkiness when it comes to the longer episodes. And so we want to introduce this concept. Kind of did something very similar when we did the My Little Pony episode just shortly ago. But now we want to make this a more regular thing. So tonight we're doing a pre-game episode on why isn't Rhystic Study white? Rhystic Study is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Smothering Tides is 3 and a white enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color. With the release of Smothering Tides earlier this year, there was a lot of comparisons to Rhystic Study. It was whenever someone does X, you get a thing from it in exchange, so it's a taxing effect. And we were, saying that this is a really good card for white. It's going to help with the mana. And in our most recent episode, where we talked about does mono white suck, we brought up the fact that it does not have good direct card draw. Mm-hmm. And from the time of recording that episode, which also I like to say I got very drunk.
You were hilarious.
Yes, and I feel like some of my thoughts weren't quite as clear. So hopefully this episode will help clear that up just a bit. The idea of taxing is both prevalent in blue and white. And so we want to ask the question, why isn't Rhystic Study a white card? It could, be a really good draw engine for white. And it's kind of on the idea of what white does, since we have a card like Smothering Ties. For me, I want to break it down into 2 different parts. The flavor and the effect itself. So we're going to start with flavor. Drawing a card is often associated with learning knowledge in Magic. So when your opponents cast a spell, you are observing, you are learning from them, and that is rewarded with drawing. What color is often associated with learning? Blue. Rhystic Study is meant to mean that you are drawing cards because you are playing with other people who are teaching you things. What if we were to just say, forget the flavor, but like mechanically speaking, because flavor and mechanics sometimes go hand in hand. Let's forget flavor. Why can't we then just have a white version where it's something like Knowledge Tithe, where you could spin it in the way of, whenever someone else plays a spell, you draw a card because you're supposedly taxing them for what they are doing.
Yeah, kind of like Mind's Eye.
Yes, very much like Mind's Eye. The reason why then Rhystic Study can't go directly into white is because white has almost an answer to anything. It's the best color for removal and has the most options. The reason why white is so bad at the card draw is because if it were able to go through its library, it wouldn't really need to plan so much. It could just draw a bunch of cards, have an answer for almost anything on the board, and then it would be pretty hard to stop. So that's why they didn't give white that card draw where it's so easy for it to card draw. It is often associated with other things like equipment and enchantments, which are things that are a little more minute, that you have to jump through hoops in order to get that card draw.
Yeah, like, because I hear like a common argument of, well, every color in the color pie at this point can draw cards now, guy. Like, black has card draw at the expense of life. Green has the card draw if you meet certain conditions with your creatures. Red has all these rummaging effects. Blue has straight up card draw, so like, why can't white have card draw? And I kind of see why people are frustrated. What do you kind of say to that? Because that's like the main argument I hear a lot of people talking about, like on Reddit and whatnot.
I feel like people need to adjust their expectations a little of what white's card draw is going to be. The card Happily Ever After was kind of a start, and we talked about how it's not the best for card advantage necessarily, but one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up as our first pregame episode was in the time in between I had listened to probably 30 episodes of Drive to Work, and almost instantly, like the day after, Mark Rosewater started talking about this a lot and how this is white's weakness, and if it had this one extra thing, it just becomes very dangerous for it to then be able to like be something harder to stop. If white were to get card draw, it's not going to get card draw in the way of it only benefiting itself. It's going to get it into the way of benefiting others, or it's going to have to be something that's a little tedious. So
yeah, it's going to lean more on like what you're saying, where it's like those conditional effects like SRAM off of auras and enchantments and equipment, or relying on like, what's that one, Endless Horizons, where it just deck thins really hard, and land tax effects that pull cards out of your library, but not necessarily directly into your hand. They like go into exile first. Sometimes.
Right, it's trying to create a balance rather than trying to get ahead of itself.
I don't really have a well-structured answer to this question that has been arising. I'm just gonna go on like a stream of thought, and you can kind of interrupt me at any time. But like, the whole idea of like, okay, so white as a color identity taxes, but it doesn't necessarily draw, as you've alluded to. Like, giving it straight up draw spells like goes against the color identity. Like, white's draw tends to be tied to very specific themes like SRAM and tutoring out for planes, and then giving out white draw really homogenizes the colors further, I think, because again, like, every color can kind of draw cards already, and it's kind of missing the point. It's like, there are so like, why does white not have like card draw? And I think my like at least mediocre answer is they have answers and hate bears. Like a lot of like, white can pretty much answer anything. There's tons of enchantment and artifact removal in white. There's tons of effects that say destroy all non-land permanents. There's plenty of spells in white that are mass land destruction, destroy all lands. There is like literally not a single permanent type that white can't get rid of. Maybe they're not like the best. Like, you can be like, oh, well, those effects aren't the best in EDH. Well, yeah, but they're still there and they still exist within the color identity. Like, you kind of have to realize what the color is all about. And so with that, like, they also have like mass recursion resilience and some really insane recursion value with all these blink effects and flicker effects. White has value and card advantage, people just don't really acknowledge it. And if they had more like generic and easy draw, they could have like every answer they would ever need, really. Like, that's really like my defense for why white doesn't have direct card draw and why Rhystic Study wasn't a white card.
Smothering Tides is pushing it just a little.
That's the best way to describe it. Like, it's the perfect balance of like, all right, I'm going up against the edge of what my color can do to meet the needs of all of these EDH players, and it's like it's right on the line. It's like, all right, this is perfect. It's like a staple, and it goes in like almost every mono white deck, but it's not like crossing the line, I don't think. And everyone loves it. Everyone loves that card.
I know that Mark Rosewater has talked about the idea of bends and breaks in the color pie, and Smothering Tithe is what he would consider a bend, whereas if we put Rhystic Study into white, it would be a break, where
that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, and they really try and like stay clear of the breaks, unless if it's with Planar Chase, the one set where they did kind of a shift in the color identities for just the one set.
So was that the set that was like Ghostly Prison and Propaganda, where like there's that same effect, one's in blue and one's in white?
I believe so. So it was kind of like you get some of the cards that you recognize, but in a different color, and it's kind of like what the secondary color would be. So yeah, that's why there is Ghostly Prison, because it is a blue and white are meant to be the like taxing effects. Like white is primary in taxing, and so that's why you have a lot of stacks effects. And then blue is secondary in taxing, but blue's taxing for or like the propaganda kind of effects is more so because white has the answers to creatures, whereas blue doesn't as much when it comes to like, because blue doesn't destroy anything. So when they said, okay, blue is propaganda is a blue card, but then when you have a card like Ghostly Prison, which is the same effect, like where would it be best next? Well, I guess white. So it kind of like just shifted it just a bit. So it still didn't necessarily break the color pie, but it bended it a little.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we kind of alluded to it in our longer episode, where it's like functionally, like we can talk about all these things that the cards can do differently, but also socially, I think like EDH players also need to embrace the meaner side of what white can do, which is the resource denial, like hate bears and stacks and mass land destruction to break that parity. And it's like, so it's like you can't really complain about, oh, mono white sucks, if you aren't willing to do the things that make mono white good. So I'm just like, sorry, not sorry. That's my answer.
This was just meant to be kind of a extension of our previous episode. Again, I was very drunk. Like, as I was listening to it, I was like, shut up. Oh my god, I can't believe I have to put this out now.
I've done that before where I'm just like, oh my god, stop talking. Oh my god, you're terrible.
Yeah. I think that's the curse of introducing alcohol into this kind of... Because once it's out there, it's out there.
It's a trade-off.
But
I accept it.
Yeah, we want these pregame episodes to only be between 12, 18 minutes. I think that for some future episodes, might do some lore just on the side. I kind of want to do one for pre-Theros, where we go over some of the lore of that to get us ready for, Journey to the Underworld. We are going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't listened to the Does Mono White Suck episode, go on over, tell us how
wrong we
much
are. We're wrong about absolutely everything, I'm sure.
Well, I was going to say how much of a fool we made ourselves drinking.
Where's this we?
Okay.
Perfectly dignified.
I made a fool of myself. But if you don't, you can follow us on Twitter at The Wizard Staff 101. Find us on YouTube, The Wizard Staff. Send us an email. Still haven't gotten any emails. That's okay. At thewizardstaff101@gmail.com. And check us out on iTunes and Spotify. We hope you have a great night. We look forward to talking to you.
Peace out.